actually my wife's job. She surprised me with a membership for Christmas. They didn't have time because I was working. But it was one of the best gifts. Lucky for me, my first day here, which is a little difficult when you start a new job, like for the first time. The first person I met was Joe. And I wasn't sure if I was going to remain here as a member or not. But at the time, I walked up and Joe was standing next to the China Doll, or C-46, and he was working out some kind of technical information to some of our cadets. Chris being one of them that we just met, and there were several more in the room today. And so I walked up and I said, Joe, can I help? And Joe's response was, do you know anything about airplanes, and who the hell are you? So we had a few, after that snippy response and a few other comments, I knew that I'd found a good home. Over the years, I come to realize that it was just Joe's style, and you better get used to it. So I think we all did that, right? Joe always approached each aircraft problem with enthusiasm, with energy, and criticism, along with few expletives and colorful words. Joe and I spent many hours also developing training information for the cadet program. So we kind of partnered up on that for the last 5 years. I was fortunate enough to share an office with Joe and learned quite a bit just by developing the training classes that worked out that way. But Joe would spend hours working on articles about World War II, about all the warbirds that were flying, and he loved to write articles, including working on the space shuttle. Those of you can see, there's a photo down there and an award that Joe received. So he worked on everything, from the old P-47 Thunderbolt to the space shuttle, and everything in between. So he was quite a guy. He was always excited about these training classes, and he took a lot of pride in sharing his information about it, because he was a world of knowledge. He just knew everything, as we mentioned before. Almost every day, many of our mechanics and our pilots would come to Joe's office and request his help on how to fix our airplane, or just to listen to some of his colorful stories. Part of their visit included Joe's coffee and cookies, and Joe's view of President Obama. That would go on for quite some time. You probably heard that at home, didn't you, Marge? Joe was truly committed to doing a quality job, and he always showed how much he respected the Wings aircraft and those who fixed and flew them. Joe was my mentor. He was a colorful character, as we all know, and a fellow Italian, so that made up for all the craziness. But he was a true friend, and we're all going to miss that Italian stallion. Thanks for being my friend, Joe.
What a day. I'm Bob Thompson. I go back to the 80, 81, 82 series, and that's when I first met Joe. It's been 30-some years of just pure enjoyment. He was my mentor, and just a lot of the things that have been said about him already, I'd be redundant in repeating, but I do know they're all true, especially the snoring. I shared that with him at El Centro one time. I shared my airplane with him. He let me fly my own airplane. I unfortunately had an accident in 1985, and Joe took my airplane under his wing, and he put that airplane back in the air after 18 months, and I was so proud of that, and I really appreciate he and the CAF for doing that. He was also my mentor. In all the years that I worked out here on the C-46, and I flew it with Russ many times to different air shows and different experiences. I was involved with bringing the Bearcat out here and all these sort of things, but I was just another fellow around here working on airplanes like the young cadet that just spoke a few minutes ago. But at some point in time, Joe says, why don't you become an A&P mechanic? I said, well, how do I do that? He said, just keep working, I'll tell you what to do, and eventually you'll understand how to be a mechanic. He was proud of that. He wrote me a letter, and I took that letter down to the local FISDO. In those days, you could walk in, and maybe you can still do it, and you say, I've got this experience, and this experience was given to me by. And they looked at that letter, and the fellow one said, I don't know what to do with this. And he walked back to another older gentleman in the back, and he read the letter, and he says, make it work. Those guys know what the hell they're doing out there. So I really appreciate Joe and Marge. We had dinner together many times, and good to see the family here, and God bless Joe. Thank you.
Memories of Joe. I first met the man when I walked through the door about 12 years ago and decided to be a member of the CAF, thanks largely in part to my wife's threat to kill me if I didn't get out of the house. And Joe and I found that we worked for the same company, American Airlines. He worked in Chicago as a mechanic, and I worked in Los Angeles and LaGuardia and a few other stations as a mechanic. And as a result of that, we struck up a pretty good friendship. And I'll tell you, it's my pleasure to have known the man. If you talk to 50 different people, you have 50 different opinions of what Joe Peppito was. The thing that impressed me more than anything about the man is when he decided to give you a piece of his mind. It's kind of like blunt force trauma. And if you didn't like what he said, maybe you should just turn around and leave. But he was very forthright, very honest, very moral man. I respected that. And Marge, you're a lucky gal, I think, to have somebody like Joe in your life, because I do truly have to say that I admire him more than anything above all. The memory I'd like to keep of Joe in my mind was we had a Convair 340 here that was part of the wing. It was donated by a gentleman from Florida, I believe it was. And no one here had any experience on it. Well, me being fresh from American Airlines, I had worked on the airplane for a few years, and Joe said, would you like to caretaker of this? So I said, yeah, okay. The point of the story is that we went to Midland with the airplane, I don't know, 12 years ago or something, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was. And my wife accompanied us on the trip, and my wife was a very good cook. So she prepared a lot of food for us to eat on the way down. We had wine, we had cheese, we had crackers, we had peanuts, we didn't have in-flight movies. But I'll tell you what, the airlines can take a lesson from that airplane. We had legroom galore, and we didn't have to have any body search cabin done before we left. So we're on our way to Midland, and my wife brings out a little bag that she had purchased at one of the novelty stores in town, and it was a crown, a scepter, and a little cloak. So we made a big fuss over Joe. We put the crown on his head, and we gave him the scepter, and we crowned him king of the Convair. And he thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. So we continued our trip to Midland, and Joe was having a little of vino, and a little of this, and a little of that, and eating everything that my wife brought around to him. And then he promptly falls asleep. So when we arrived in Midland, Joe was dead to the world. So that's my memory of Joe. And I'd like to say that I know he's in a better place, and I hope he's here watching us, because I surely will live in. Thank you.
What a great guy. But just a big kind of thing that has always stuck in my mind was, I know a lot of the stories you've heard, the P-47. He loved the P-47. If he loved anything other than the P-47, why didn't know about it? But he kept talking about it, and I'm like, no, Joe, this is a cool airplane, but, I'm sure there's what about these jets? These jets are just, they do unbelievable things. And, we go back and forth, and Steve was saying, you could argue with it, but you never win. And so, eventually, I'm like, all right, whatever, this is a cool airplane, I guess. but I've never seen one. And one of the air shows, Chino brought their P-47. And Joe and I walk out, you know, and I'm just astounded. I'm like, wow, you know, that's all I said. I said, wow. And he goes, yeah, I'll leave you two